There's no difference between a Zav who saw twice, right? A Zav is, of course, I don't know, they nowadays syphilis, gonorrhea, whatever they identify it as, but there's no difference between a Zav who saw twice and a Zav who saw three, Ella Korban. Except that a Zav who saw three, they both have to sit Shiv Nekiyim, seven clean days, just like a woman who was in Nida. But a Zav Gadol, somebody who saw Ziva 3 times, he actually has to bring a Korban. Whereas a Zav Cotton, somebody who saw Ziva twice, at the end of his 7 days, does not have to bring a Korban. Very similar, in fact, to a Nida in that respect. Okay? And Mitzorah Muskar and Mitzorah Mulcha, there's no difference between a Mitzorah who has been closeted away to see if his saras will grow in size. And Mitzorah Mulcha, one has been ascertained to have definite saras, Ela Prio Frima, except that a Mitzorah Muchlat is cast outside the camp, and he has to rip his clothes, and he has to grow his mustache, Tiglachas, and at the end of the time when he becomes tar, he has to shave off all the hair of his body. B'tziporim, he has to bring birds, which are not actually karbonos, one of which is slaughtered, and the other dipped in it and cast away, tossed out into the wild. So those are all things that are different between Mitzorah Muskar and Mitzorah Muchlat, one who's closeted to see if it is Saras, and one which is actually determined to be Saras.
A Mitzorah Muskar, though, eventually becomes
depends if it spreads or not.
He can't stay just...
It says Muskar for 3 weeks. If it doesn't spread, then he's tar. Okay? Bar Posi to Rabbi Lezeri. This Mishnah is like Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer says, Apishlish bokin mosomid ne korban. Also, the third time we check the guy. Now, what happens is that we have a zav, he becomes a zav ba'ones, because he has some malady which we can attribute a ziva to other than the disease itself, such as he ate too much, or he exerted himself too much. So some physical condition other than the malady itself to which a ziva can be attributed. So then he doesn't have to. He's not a zav. However, the question is whether we check him the third time or only the first 2 times to see if there was some other attributable factor. So the Rabbi Lezer Mar. So the third time we also check him, there might have been another factor in their korban, and if there is another factor, he doesn't have to bring a korban. All right, he's not exempt from the korban. So according to them, there's no difference in checking the first, the second time. We check the third time as well. No difference between a zav of 2 rios and a zav of 3 rios. Barank Rabbanan, but like Rabbanan, hashniya meones tar. If the second one had some extenuating circumstance and it remains tar, he doesn't have to wait 7 days then to become tar. However, Ashlishis, the third time round, even if it's meones, even if he has the another attributing factor, precipitating factor for his ziva, he's still tummy. So according to Rabbanan, there's another difference between the zav ba'al shtei rios and the zav ba'al shalosh rios. This distinction of whether we say that you would check him out for an ones or not on the third time, according to Rabbi Lezer, according to whether you check him out or not, according to Rabbi Lezer, there's no difference between a zav of 3 years and a zav of 2 years. We always check. According to Rabbanan, there is another difference that should have been enumerated in our Mishnah. That the second time we check, the third time we no longer check. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef said no. Rabbanan. If it's not going like Rabbanan, flow off to Rabbi Lezer, it's not going like Rabbi Lezer either. How so? The tiny Rabbi Lezer said the following: that which I said that the third time you check out to see if it's an ones, Lola Sosra Amarti. I didn't say that if he's an ones, he's not Soser Shimon. That was a very interesting thing. Just like a Nida, if she sees blood in the middle of 7 days she's waiting, she becomes tummy again, right? So to a Zav, if he sees Ziva in the middle of his 7 days, so he has to start kind of from scratch. So it says Rabbi Lezer, that which I said you check for onus on the third time is not to say that if it was ba'onus, his 7 days are uninterrupted. His 7 days are interrupted regardless. But from the time he saw it twice, he has to count 7 days. So a third time, even if it's bonus, he still has to start again from scratch the 7 days. If it was on day 6, he has to start again from scratch. Okay? So lo marti, I only lo so marti el shelo yavi korban. All I said is that if he's an onus on the third time, he doesn't bring a korban because he never became a true zav gadol because the third time was bonus, but he still has to start from scratch again. Again, Rabbi Lezer repeats himself. Lo marti she'eno zav listor. I didn't say that he's not a zav vis-a-vis undermining 7 days. No, those are undermined. It could be the Shari Torah Eretz Yisrael takes out the next 2 words. If you read them, it's L'Marti She'eno Zav Listar Zav Hoil Listar. No, of course he does take away. He does become his Shiva Nakim are broken. L'Marti She'eno Korban. All I say is it doesn't bring a korban. Now, Hadar Merah, this teeth. Now, there's certainly here. There's a difference, even according to Rabbi Lezer, between the second and third times, right? Because Rabbi Lezer also says that the third time, even if it was ba'ones, it still breaks your ziva, still breaks your shiva nakim. So he does consider the third time to be different than the second time, and that the third time, even if it's unintentional, even if there's some other precipitating event, nevertheless, you still are considered to break your shiva nakim, and you have to start from scratch. So that difference should have been enumerated, right? Let it say hashniya, the second time. It should be lo b'stira. Shari Torah Eretz Yisrael lo b'stira v'lo b'korban. The second time, if it's an ones, right? It doesn't. There's no concept of stira and no concept of korban, right? Obviously, there's nothing to be soser. You don't yet have to wait shiva nakim, right? If the shiva nakim means only after the second time, and the second time was bonus, so then you don't break your shiva nakim. You don't have shiva nakim. How many noki days do you have to wait? If you only saw once, Yom Echad, right? 1 day. So that doesn't break that. If it's bonus, it doesn't break that 1 day, right? So Hashniya lo b'stira v'lo b'korban. Nor do you bring a korban either.
Sure, there would be no korban.
Right, because they never got to 3. Hashlish is the third time. B'stira, first of all, breaks it even it's bonus, and secondly, it's a korban, right? As a korban as well. So it must be. So therefore, if our mission is not like Rabban, it's not like Rabbi Lezer either. So it must be. We're not talking about. The one is going to say on base what the issue is. We'll wait till then. I'll die to Rabbi Lezer. But this kind of parenthetical remark. According to Rabbi Lezer, Rosh Time B'Shufi. If you saw 2 times. A woman saw. Now we're going to woman. A Zava saw 2 times b'shufi, in other words, without any pain. Va'akas b'koshi. It says ushi here, but the Leiden manuscript says b'koshi. Koshi. This is a complicated sugya which you probably put out of your mind, which you had in Masechta Nida, but it's talking about a woman who's maksho leiled and she's yoledes bezof. She has labor pains. That's maksha. And then she has ziva afterwards, right? So the question is what the status is. So it goes back and forth there of a type of thing which you don't remember from cycle to cycle. But here it says that the first 2 times it was without any, precipitating event. She just saw ziva, and by a woman just anytime she sees it, it's nida and then or ziva. The third time she was actually in the middle of labor. So Teres, the third time she's soser, right? Even though it's not true ziva, it undermines her count of 7 days because obviously there was blood. However, Ain't Mevia korban, she doesn't bring a korban. She's not considered to be a ziva of 3 times. Who has to bring a korban because there was it's just like by a zav, the third time undermines the shiva nakim, but doesn't require a korban as bonus. So too here, if by a woman the third time was bekoshi, was with later pains that undermine shiva nakim, but she doesn't have to bring a korban. Okay. Rabbi Yudin said, so why does our Mishnah not distinguish between the case of the second time and the third time vis-a-vis the concept of stira and vis-a-vis the concept of checking for onus? So says, I'll tell you why. Because our Mishnah is talking about Masdisa b'shnei b'nei Adam. Our Mishnah is talking about two people after they've already ascertained that they saw real ziva. We're talking about the difference between a guy, not between the second sighting and the third sighting, what the difference in the parameters between the second sighting and the third sighting are, which there are real differences, but rather that's the difference between Yankel, who saw Ziva twice, definite Ziva twice, right? After we've already established that it wasn't bonus, he saw Ziva twice, and Beryl, who saw Ziva 3 times again, after we've established it's true Ziva, what's the between these two individuals? So in fact, there are differences between the second sighting and third sighting, which our Mishnah is not discussing. Our Mishnah is talking about not the chefza of the sighting, but the gavra who saw. Right? So therefore, between the gavra who saw and the gavra who saw, the only difference, once we know definitely that what they saw was a sighting, is the difference in our Mishnah, the difference of a carbon. Okay? Amar Echina said, Masnisa Amar Kain. Our Mishnah indicates that we're talking about people, not about the gavra, not about the chefza. Because it says, Ein bein mitzorah muskar and mitzorah muchlad. There's no difference between mitzorah who's in hesger, who's closeted away, from mitzorah who's muchlad and mitzorah who's definitive already, ela priya, except for ripping clothes, or prima, and growing a mustache, tiglachas, and getting the haircut, Vitziporim and birds. Hada Amra, and this tells us Bishnei b'nei Adam anakayom, meaning they're about two separate people, because obviously there are many other differences in between after the second time or third time. Who the mitzorah is metame, if he's closeted away, who is metame, how is metame, if he's definite mitzorah is metame much more. So therefore, obviously, only talking about not the difference in status between mitzorah, hezger and hechlet, but the difference between an individual who's muzgar and an individual who's muchlar. Okay? Again, the Gemara itself says that actually. Because in Tamer Baal the Mechor talking about one person and the different situations in one individual. In this day, let's say, Ein ben Baheres Gedoyel or Baheres Ketana, between a big Baheres, small, which is definitely Tamei, and Baheres kind of small Baheres, a small Tzaras mark, which is not yet definitely Tamei, is closeted, so the difference between those. But it says Mitzorah. So Echmada Tamarto, and just like you say over there by Mitzorah, B'shnei b'nei Adam Anakayim, we're talking about not the afflictions, but we're talking about the people who possess the afflictions. Hachas, so too by Zav, B'shnei b'nei Adam Anakayim, we're talking about the people who have the afflictions, not the afflictions themselves. Okay, let's once to talk about Mitzorah, of course. This is a good opportunity to talk about Mitzoras. Parchabo, I don't remember this being a Megillah at all, but I haven't learned Megillah in many years, but I assume it's not there. Parchabo mitoch hezger. Now, as halacha, if you can turn completely white, you become an albino, then you're tar. Okay? You're tar. Tzaras is only if you have a mark on your skin. But if you're...
There's no comparison between the white of the mitzvah.
Right, there has to be a contrast, exactly. Okay? So, what if you were already closeted away to see if your Tzaras would expand, and expanded very, very much to the point that you are completely white now. Okay? So, Yochanan says you have to bring birds. You have to bring birds. How you never became a true Mitzorah, doesn't matter. The Gemara is going to explain. It doesn't matter, ain't told Sipar. You don't have to bring birds. Alright, but Rabbi Mel said, Masdisim Sai, Rabbi Yochanan. The following Mishnah. It's actually a Bryce in Torah's Kohanim. The following Bryce in Torah's Kohanim is a proof for Rabbi Yochanan. It says, Min HaTzarua. It says that when the Min HaTzarua, the parts of pasuk, but we're about bringing, in the case of bringing birds, it comes to include a person who Tzaras who has afflicted him completely. He has to bring birds. Sorry, I lost my place. Balodinu. says more. So says the Bryce actually. Shvir kal v'chomer. My misha tahar a person who became tar, meaning he actually was a true mitzvah and then he became ois mitzvah, no longer a mitzvah. My misha tahar vein simona mitamim imo, and he no longer has any blemish on his body. There are no simonim of tumah about him. Don't sipor him. He's got to bring birds. Misha tahar, he who is tahar, this guy who became completely white, but simoni mitavim vimo, and in a sense he's more stringent because he's still a simoni tumah, and that he's completely white. His whiteness never left; it just expanded. And odin sheton sipor is not kavachom to bring birds. But if you come completely blemish free, you got to bring birds. Certainly, if you're not blemish free in tar because of a technical reason, you have to bring birds as an atonement. This is more no. On the contrary, it's again all the Bryce is speaking. I'll prove to you not that way. Amad bo shnei is a person who was closeted away for 2 weeks and his taras did not expand at all. Yochiach, he'll disprove what we just said. Shetor, because this guy was closeted away for 2 weeks, his taras did not grow. Shetor v'sees tar, the simonim betam v'imo, despite the fact there still is this white spot. He doesn't. The white spot hasn't expanded, but he still has it, right? Ve'enoton siporim. Never. He doesn't bring birds. So too maybe the guy who is white spot expanded and fills his entire body also doesn't bring birds. Talmud Lomar. That's what the pasuk says. Mina tzarua. That's what we need the pasuk, because the logic would not work. We need a pasuk to tell us lavish porcha bekulo, that a person whose saras is expanded throughout him, she'eton siporim, that he has to bring birds as well. Says the more im oimer at. Now, what are you going to say? What is Rabbi Lezer going to say? How is Rabbi Lezer going to learn this? Rabbi Lezer says that when it expands throughout him, he does not have to bring birds. So it says more im oimer at. If you say litoher mitoch hezger, an individual who became tar when previously he was closeted away, lo yeton siporim. He doesn't have to bring birds, right? So, and you want to say that the same thing is true, just like the guy whose nega never went away, it just never expanded, that he doesn't have to bring tziporim. You want to say the same thing by this guy who the tzaras expanded throughout his entire body. Yosivne, I refute you. Lo mutav lashi pricha prichos. It's better to make a comparison between. One second. I'm sorry. Let me do that line again. And I just look at my notes. I did it wrong. Imamrat, and if you're going to say, this is actually Rabbi Yochanan still attacking. He says, if you want to say like Rabbi Lezer, that the Torah mitoch hezger, well, look, just like a guy who became Torah out of hezger in that because his wound didn't expand, lo yet told Sipor, he doesn't bring birds. So too, the guy who became Torah because everything expanded and filled his entire body, also doesn't bring bird. Yosivne, I'll refute that, says Rabbi Yochanan. Lo mutav lo shi pricha prichos. Actually, the correspondence should be made logically between a guy whose saras expanded and another guy's saras expanded. Now, a guy's saras expanded, not completely, he definitely has spring birds. That's a mitzvah muchlad. He's a definite mitzvah. This guy whose saras expanded to the point that it completely enveloped his body, well, logic dictates he should be similar, because that's also called pricha, right? And that it expanded, and therefore, since that is the case, since it's expanded to that extent, we should have to bring birds, as opposed to you can't bring a comparison for lo amida prichos to somebody whose saras remain the same, and who in fact does not bring birds, because he's not similar to this guy that saras expanded, his saras was static. Okay? So therefore that's why he doesn't bring any birds.
Couldn't you also say it's just xeris akosov, that if it doesn't expand, that you don't bring birds, period, and then not have to draw these, kavachomers?
What did you want to say?
That it's xeris akosov. It doesn't expand, you just be closeted away, musgar, and you don't have to bring a bird.
Yeah, but how do we know? We want to know the opposite. Rabbi Yochanan wants to say that if it did expand completely, they do bring birds. So how we need the pasuk of Minat Sarua. And it says, although I guess once we have the pasuk, we don't have to deal with it logically, but now he's adding a logic. He's saying you can't compare the guy whose nega was static to the guy whose nega, yeah. Okay. Says more further, Rabbi Chanina, the friend of the rabbis, that means he never got true smicha and remained the chover. But says Masdisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. The Brisa proves Rabbi Yochanan. The Kain Tanya.
1 second. What's proof of Rabbi Yochanan is this? That's the same thing.
Okay. Kain Tanya we learned. We learned it's actually a Brisa, not a Mishnah. Kain Tanya we learned a Brisa. The Chayin Tayim Masiv L'Chavrei. One of the Tanoim asked his friend, Loi Mamar to position in this Chalita. Not. I'm sorry. Loi Mamar to position ain't on this Chalita. If a guy who the way he learned the logic is. The guy who doesn't bring birds is the guy whose nega remained static, right? So he was never got to the status of muchlot. He never was candidate for muchlot. So if he doesn't bring bird, right? Lo yamaita b'zeh and nizkal chalita. Thomas, as opposed to this guy, shezet nizkal chalita. Look, this guy who the tzaras expanded throughout his body. At one point, it expanded further, but didn't cover yet his whole body. At that point, had you stopped the process, he would become a mitzvah muchlot. So therefore he's saying logic dictates you should have to bring birds. Because he had traversed mitzvah muchlot and transcended it. But he had gone through mitzvah muchlot status, so therefore he should have to bring birds. Suppose the guy Saras always remained static, he never reached mitzvah muchlot status. That's why he should never bring birds. Okay? Okay, the Chayin Tayim is a loyal marta position and this chalita. This guy who never got to the stage of chalita, okay, he doesn't have to bring birds, right? However, this guy who did get the stage of chalita traversed, he should have to bring birds from position niskal chalita, home niskal chalita yet ton sipori.
They ever use the logic that the total expansion is the ultimate of the expansion of the mitzvah. So if you needed to bring a bird.
Well, that's a similar logic. I think that that's essentially what they mean here. I think that's the pshat. So it says more. Could be, but Sofa Messiah Rabbi Lezer. I have a proof Rabbi Lezer from the Seifa. What does the Seifa say? Hator mitoch hezger. Somebody who gets Torah out of being closeted, party is exempt. Mipriya, from having to rip his clothes. Miprima, growing his mustache. Mitiglachas, from shaving. Mitiporim, from birds. As almost says Rabbi, he says, what can we see from the Seifa? It says here everything which we're talking about here is although we didn't see it, the commentator brings down that everybody's talking about here is talking about where he came Torah because something expanded, and since it Torah becomes something expanded, and then it says quite clear that since he became Torah from expansion, he is exempt from all those things which you want to be mechayiv. And Rabbi Yochanan doesn't have to do it, not even the birds.
What do you mean he became Torah from expansion?
In other words, this brisa, only a fragment of which is quoted, he tells us a story about where the person who was muskar became Torah because the nega expanded.
Because it expanded or it didn't expand?
No, it did expand. It expanded too far. Right?
Oh, you mean the total?
Right, total expansion. This Bryce, although we don't have the full thing here, it says that he doesn't have to bring birds. Okay, I'm not sure, but I'm doing my plea in Lavi Tziporim. This is only a question about the birds. I've Lavi Korban, but about the Korban, Kol Amamoidi She'eno maybe Korban. Interesting thing. This guy who became completely white, he doesn't bring a Korban. Why is that? Vitani, we learned from the Brisa, B'shvi Yigalech, or B'shmini Yavi. It says in the 7th day you get a haircut, the 8th day you bring your karbanos. Eshu ton tiglach is the guy who gets a haircut, maybe korban, he brings being korban. Sheino ton tiglach, if the guy does not get a haircut, Eino maybe korban, he doesn't bring a korban, and this guy says to have to get a haircut since he never became truly a muchlat, so therefore he doesn't bring a korban. Rabbi Chama bar Ukva said, B'Shem Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yosef Rechina, it's a slightly different gears in the Shai Torah, so it's all based on the Bavli, it should be V'Mitzoruah Asher Bo Anega. So the person has leprosy, whose leprosy is upon him, the gomer, etc. The tamei yikra. He has to call out wherever he goes that he's tamei, right? So going to the last line here. Eshetumoso tliya b'nigo. A guy whose tumah has to do with his nega, with the affliction. He has to. He calls out tamei. He has to go outside the camp and he has to call tamei. And he has to go out to and he has to do prion prima, right? He has to rip his clothes and grow his mustache because he has a nega. However, Yotze said this is a contradistinction to a guy a guy who was in Hezgir, who was closeted, but never definitively determined to be a nega. So then he doesn't have to do, as the Mishnah said, he doesn't have to do priya, prima, tiglachas, and ziporim. He doesn't have to do those four things about ripping his clothes, etc. Says the Gemara, I could do priya, prima. Until now, I only see that priya, prima he doesn't have to say, because there, by the parish of tamei ikra, so it says he has to rip his clothes and grow his hair. I only see he doesn't have to do that. Tiglachas, ziporim, minayin. How we know he's exempt also if he's still in hezger, not muchlat. How do we know he's exempt from tiglachas, from her shaving, and from bringing the birds? So says Gemara. Rabbi Lezer de Rumia b'shem Rabbi Ami says, "Zos tiyeh torasa mitzvah b'yom." This is the Torah and the Mitzvah in the day. Eshu mitar b'yom echad. An individual who becomes tamei and Torah in one day. In other words, the guy who has definite saras already, so as soon as it diminishes, he can start the Torah process, right? So he's the guy who has tiglachs and tziporim. Yotze is opposed to this guy who's musgar. He's closeted. Let's say his nega shrinks the first day. Can he get out of the closet? Can't come out of the closet. He's got to wait for all 7 days. So therefore, it's not possible for him to become Torah immediately. He's got to wait the full 7 days. So therefore, he doesn't have the halacha, which is stipulated for those who can become Torah immediately, which is to be shaved and to bring the birds.
What's the time frame for the Mitzvah becoming completely white? Is it
Anytime. Well, if he's in Hezger, he still has to stay within Hezger until his week is up. Is that what you're asking?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Is there a certain time period?
No. Once he's a muchlot, anytime his nega spreads throughout his body, he can be torn immediately.
Even if it's a month later.
Yeah, makes no difference. Okay. Okay, back to easier Gemara. Aim mitzvah and tefillin mezuzah is no difference between Sfarim and tefillin mezuzah. Sfarim is Sefer Torah. El Sfarim nichtav b'chol lashon. Sfarim can be written in any language, even in a foreign language. So mezuzah ein nichtav as el v'ashuris. They can only be written in ashuris. Chol lashon. I said language, but that's actually not necessarily the case. It might only be the alphabet. Okay. Shimon ben Lo Gamliel Omer. The Tefillah and the Club is written in our Assyrian alphabet, which is the language currently in vogue for Hebrew. Shagam Omer Apis for him also in Sefer Torah Loitu Shekos V'Livais, it can only be written in Greek. And the Gemara is going to explain. Stephen says, "Vayikol Haaretz Achos V'Arechonim." Before Migdal Bavel, the entire nation, the entire land was one language, and the same words, one set of words. So it says, Gemara, what does that mean? They all spoke all 70 languages. And we normally understand the meaning by Bavel.
What?
There was 2 million of Bavel was one language, and then it split up, right? but that's not what it says here, actually. That's the next opinion. But the first opinion actually holds that they all spoke all 70 languages, and in Migdal Bavel, some of them were rendered, they forgot some of the languages that they knew. Okay? Each one forgot the languages that you know. The other says, no, until now, until now they're speaking in the language of the one of the world, B'lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. Tai Bar Kapar said, Yavtahu Kim Liefes, may God do beautiful things for Yefes, Vishkom Bal Hashem, may he reside in the tents of shame. Sheyumedabrim B'lashono Sheyefes, it means to be able to speak the language of Yefes, Greek normally understood, Bal Shame, in the tents of shame. Now I want to tell you about Yefes. Let's talk about his progeny. Yefes, the children of Yefes were Gomer, Mogagum, Badai, Yovan, Vituvahu, Meshach, Vatiros. Gomer is Garmamaya. It's generally understood to be Germany. Magog is Gitaya. It's generally understood to be the Goths. Gataya. The Goths and the Germans go together. Modai Kishmua, like it sounds, it's the Medians. Yovan is Asus. I guess that's our Greece. Tuval is Vitanya. Meshech is Messiah. Tiras, Rabbi Simon Omer Pras, that is Persia. Rabban Amri Tarka, it's Turkey. I think that's what Tarka is. But they Gomer, the children of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Rivas, the So Garma. That's Asya, Vadayos, Vigarmenika. Again, they have Germany. So I don't know. A whole bunch of Germans here. Yeah. Bnei Yavan, the kids of Yavan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kitim, and Dodanim. That's Alasteris, Abya, V'Dardanaya. Es-HaRodi, that's Rodis, that we know what that is. Es-HaTamri, that's Chometz, whatever that is. Es-HaChamosi, that's Chamas. Ad Losha, Ad Kalara, whatever that is. Rav Yudan Bar Yudan Bar Sholom's Amar Mikan Targum. From here we see that we're allowed to that we're allowed to give translations and understandings of various different words in Torah, even though they're very obscure, because that's obviously what we just did. Okay. Rabbi Yerusalmi from Beis Guvin said, there are 4 nice languages which is proper for the world to use. These are the Laz, which show this to be Greek, Lezemer, for a song. Romi, generally understood to be Latin. The Krav, some say the Krav means for prose. Krovos are like prose poems. I would say the Krav means for battle, and that Latin is a good language for battle. Sursi, it's another language. It's good Lailaya for mourning. Ivri, Hebrew, Ladibor, it's good for speaking. They show me some say Ashuri, our alphabet. That's this alphabet, right? Ashuri, the Assyrian alphabet, is Luksav, is nice for writing. Ashuri, Assyrian Yesh Luksav, there's an Assyrian writing, Vein Loloshim, but it has no language. It's interesting, just an alphabet. Ivri, Hebrew, Yesh Loloshon, it has a language. Vein Luksav, it doesn't have a set alphabet. The Bavli holds that there was an alphabet was given at Har Sinai. Yerushalmi is not so clear on the matter. Yerushalmi actually waffles a lot more, as you will see in a moment.
So how was the assertion that was written?
We'll see. Machlokas. Baruch Lam Ksav, so they chose, Hashem chose, but more, it seems, that's what Korban says, but it seems that Ezra chose. Ksav Ashuri, Assyrian writing, V'Lashon Ivri, and Hebrew language. Shuri, why is it called Shuri? Shumushar B'Ksavo, it's happy or satisfied in its writing because it's very, very handsome. We said another interpretation, Hashem Sholem B'Yodem B'Yashur. They brought this writing with them from Assyria when they came from Gos. Time Rabbi Yisrael Goyo Ezra Shetinos in the Torah Yodo. Ezra was suitable, he's such a big Godo. The Torah could be given on his end. Ella Shekadmo Dor Moshe. Technical problem. Moshe came first, right? I have a Bishlo Nidna Torah Yodot, even though the Torah was not given by Ezra. Ayodov Avu Nitan Ksav Loshon Yodot. He was able to give language and write an alphabet. It says Ksav Nishtavan. The writing which was different. Kosuv Aramis was written in Aramaic, Umaturi Aramis and translated into Aramaic. The local in Kakasva, not like other alphabets, Lemikre, to read. This is the writing on the wall at the time of Belshazzar. So it was written in Ksav Ashuris, so nobody knew how to read it because that was the first time Ksav Ashuris was really coming into popularity, right? And so that's why Mulamit Sheboba Yom Nitan tells us that they started reading Ksav Ashuris, and nobody knew how to read it, nobody had the foggiest, because things were just changed. Now, getting back to the issue before, Rav Nachman Amar Beratz, and Ratz is Old Hebrew alphabet. Beratz need no Torah. The Torah actually was written like the Samaritans still write it in Old Hebrew writing, right? V'asik Rabbi Yosef. That's what Rabbi Yosef holds away. Rabbi Omer V'ashuris the Torah was given in Assyrian print. Ukshechatu. So why do we have ancient Hebrew script? Ukshechatu, when they sinned, they got a lousier print. Nepach lehem l'ratz, they changed the rats. Ukshezochem Ezra, when they got back their merits, the days of Ezra, Nepach lehem l'ashuris, they got ashuris. It says Gamayom also today. Magid Mishneh, the way of telling over a second time, Ashilach will return to you, meaning that I'll give you back what you had previously. Because I've lost Mishnah Torah is also safer, so Moshe Rabbeinu is already told you write this Mishnah Torah on the book, Ksav Shu Asli Ishtan also Ksav, which was going to shift back and forth throughout the ages. We think the Sefer Torah is static, right? It's much more in flux because it's shifted back and forth between the Hebrew writing and Assyrian writing. Taishim Elazar B'Shum Rabbi Elazar and Parta says Shomer B'Shum Rabbi Elazar Hamadoi, name Elazar Hamadoi. Ksav Ashur need that Torah. No, the Torah is given Ksav Ashur. Why? What's the proof of this? Umat time or what logic is there? Vave Amudim. It says that there were hooks for the pillars in the Mishkan. So the letter Vav is there, right? It says Vavei Amudim. That's what hooks are described as Vav. So this teaches us Shu Vav and Shu Torah that the Vav in the Torah should be doimim, should be similar Amudim to the pillars, and that's Ksav Ashuri. Amrei Levi said, Mandamar L'Ratz need the Torah. According to the opinion that holds the Torah was given in ancient Hebrew, Ayin Maisa Nisim. The only closed letter in ancient Hebrew is an Ayin. So the ayin and the luchos stood benes. Our ayin, not the samach, no, only the ayin, because the samach is open in ancient Hebrew. It's like if I recall correctly, and this is purely from memory, it might be completely wrong. The samach looks like this. The ayin looks like this, only sideways, not similar to ours, but sideways. Yeah. Okay. So in any event, Amrei Levi said, Manamar Shuri the Torah. He holds the Torah to give a Shuri. Samach Maisinisim. The Samach is the nace because that's was sideways. That was hollow. Rabbi Yeshua Bar Rabbi Simon Tarvein Amri, they both said, Torah Rishonim, the Torah, the way the Rishonim wrote it, Lo Heisholahem. Now this is the Hey, I don't understand, and the only way I have to work with the Shari Torah is Eretz Yisrael. Shari Torah Yisrael says it's supposed to be Lo Ayin Sholahem, Lo Mem Shalem Sasum. In the Torah, the way it was given, they didn't have. It wasn't Ksav Ivri, so the Ayin wasn't closed. But they didn't have the Manspach yet. They did not have the, what's Manspach? Manspach are the Sophios letters. Manspach. So they didn't have the only closed, if you have the Sophios letter, you have a closed mem, right? But if you don't have a Sophios letter, so what's the only closed letter in the Hebrew alphabet? Samach, right. So that's what they're saying. The Rishonim, Loya Lohei Shalem, or Lo Ayin Shlem, Lo Mem Shlem Sosu. They didn't have an ayin closed because it wasn't ancient Hebrew, and they didn't have a mem closed because they didn't have the Sophios letters, right? Samach Sasum, the only thing they had was a Samach closed. Taisha Gomi Omer, Apisvar Loy Tiyoshi Kosi, Yavonis. The Sefer Torah, they only allowed to write in Greek, because Motku, they checked out and found the Torah cannot be fully translated Eli Bois except in Greek. See, the article translation, they're only elucidations. I don't know if you noticed that. They're not translations because you can only translate Torah in Greek. Okay? Burgundy echad bido lahem. Now there's a certain burgundy. Burgundy is like a watch, a night watchman. Certain night watchmen also then continued and devised or made up. It should be. It says here Aramis. It's not Aramis. It would be Latinit or Roman or Latin. Mitoch Ivanis. Latin is a derived language from Greek, and Chazal and the Bavli are particularly the caustic in their remarks about Latin, that it's not a independent true language. So Latin, it says, was a corruptly derived from Greek.
Is that true?
Are you asking me?
I don't think so.
You're asking me?
All I know is that
I'm not a...
English and
Everything comes from Latin, yeah, but here's a... Right.
It's really dramatically dealing.
But they say Latin comes from Greek. Rabbi Yerushalmi Megillah Barba said, Tirgem Akilas. Hager. Akilas again, there's not Unclus. Akilas actually, some say, translate Torah into Greek. Others say into Aramaic, but it's not Unclus. Tiyam Akilas Hager, Torah Lifnei Rabbi Lezer, he translated before Lezer, Lifnei Rabbi Yeshua, V'kil and they praised him. From they said, you are more beautiful than human beings. Meaning your translation is very beautiful. Ravida Rapazi Shua ben Levi Shal. Ravida Rapazi said, Rabbi Shua ben Levi asked, V'lomo le anu amri. Why do we say in our Mishnah, getting back to Mishnah, Yesh b'sfarim masher ein b'film zuzos. So if the Torah have a difference in film zuzos, Shasfarim nichtavim. So now there are a lot of typos in the next line. Shasfarim nichtavim. The Sefer Torah can be written b'shnei oros. Should be two hides. They're only written on one hide, right? Films, Sefer Torah obviously couldn't write the whole Sefer Torah one hide, so they would have hide after hide. But films, is only one hide. Why do you mention that the difference? And furthermore, Heisi Rabbi Yitzchak Braid Rav Chia Kisova, Rabbi Yitzchak son Rav Chia the Sofer, Kisova is the Sofer said, to Rabbah ask even better question. To Rabbah means like greater. Shasvarim nichtavim b'shtei dapin. Svarim can be written in two separate columns, right? So you obviously have many columns. They can be written in one column, right? So the Chaverin said for Ramona, no. Nemar daf. That's not as good a question actually, because Nemar daf b'shtei shuros. So what about if you took two parchments and wrote one column over the two parchments? See, that's my writing, right? Is that clear?
Yeah.
So actually, Michael, the question of what's the better question?
You need at least two parchments for the Sefer.
So if actually,
It
has to be the same page, right? You can't divide among two pages. So actually, it is a better question to ask that you can forget about the question about 2/3 separate hides by Sefer Torah being mutter and by Tefillin being osir. But I have a better question, and it's a better question. I can't put two the same column on two hides by a.
Hazino.
No, I'm sorry. It's not a better question. I'm sorry, I mixed it up. It's not a better question. You're saying that you can't. Again, let me take it again for that. He said, if you put, maybe it's a bigger case, you can't take two hides. That you cannot take two hides over the fact that you cannot write in two columns. Because you might be able to write one column in two hides. So you have to tell me that's no good. Amunzi said, no, that's not true. Even Sefer Torah, nobody writes like this. In other words, if somebody would actually write by Sefer Torah, so then it's a better kasha to ask that you cannot take two hides by Tefillin Mezuzah, and you can take two hides by Sefer Torah Tefillin Mezuzah. Why is that by Sefer Torah? Why is that not mentioned? But that's not a good question, because actually we never write a Sefer Torah like this, even though it might theoretically be mutter. So since we never write a Sefer Torah like this, it would not be a good question to ask that here's the difference between Sefer Torah and Tefillin, that Tefillin can be written only on one parchment, or Sefer Torah can be written on two parchments, because we never write Sefer Torah like this. So ever the better question is actually from columns. In Sefer Torah we can write more columns, and as many as we want, actually, whereas by Tefillin Mezuzos you can only write one column, not more than one column. Okay. So it says more. What about this difference? Teilim b'Sfarim. You're allowed to put letters between the lines by Sefer Torah. Ain't Teilim lo b'Tefillin lo mezuzos. You can't put letters between the lines by Tefillin mezuzos. Says more. No, that's not a good question either. The Ankur explains the way the Ran explains this. Sfarim shekosim ketfillin. Why can you put letters between the lines or words between the lines? Why?
You left out a letter and a word.
Well, yeah. So
rather than rewrite the whole thing.
Right. So you put in, but so he says, but that's only if you have space between the lines.
Right.
If you don't have space between the lines, you can't do that, right? It says, really, it's not that Sefer Torah you can do it, and in Tefillin you can't do it, but Tefillin written very small, there's never any room, right? Whereas Sefer Torah written large, and there's room. But Echam, if you wrote your Tefillin like a Torah, and it's big, so you can put something between the lines. You wrote your Sefer Torah, and it's small, you can't put something between the lines. So it's not actually between Sefer Torah and Tefillin, but between the large and small four styles of writing. Okay? Now actually, even by Tefillin, you're not really allowed to put something between the lines because you have to write them all in order. If you're in Kesidron, you cannot put in an earlier word after writing a later word. We're talking about hypothetically, were that not to be an issue. So there would still be a permission to toll in by Sefer Torah and not by Tefillin. Okay, that's what it says here. Tefillin shemezuzos shekosvan Sfarim shekosvan Tefillin mezuzos with very small print ain't done by not allowed to put something between the line. Tefillin the mezuzos shekosvan Sfarim Ron like Sfarim telling me allowed to put something between the line. But Rabbi Zera Shari Ami said hayakosuf hayakosef Eila im, right? You want to know how wide a column may be. How wide? What's the minimum size of a column? So it says it's 10 letters. Eila is 3 letters. Im is 2 letters. Another im is 2 letters. That's 7 altogether. I mean, plus 2 spaces between the letters. Eila im 2 spaces. That's 9. And the shiur is 9 letters. I said 10 is 9 letters. That's what it says. Im I saw parshas can't kosher. If there were 9 letters, or the space of 9 letters per line, it's kosher, we laugh, now it's possible. The same way you write Sfarim, the same way you write Tefillin mezuzos, meaning Ksav Ashuris. Right? Now, what we're coming to preclude is we don't write Sefer Torah in Greek anymore. Even though the Mishnah allowed it, we don't do it anymore. Okay. Right.
Why was he praised for writing it in Greek? I mean, why would...
Because Greek is a particularly nice language.
Yeah.
So it's fine. Even Chazar read
it. The Greeks.
The Greek, but that was the language of code. That was the English of the time. Rabbi Zera Rav said, "Nikim nekabi reicho shel hay." If the leg of the hay, the one which is attached, gets a hole, im gorov nishtayir shemir ktana. If the place where it got the hole theoretically removed, there would still remain a leg there. Kosher, then it's kosher. If it's not, it's possible. Has to be theoretically the size of a leg, be above where the hole or the psul occurred. Rabbi Zera said, "Oh yeah, gimel mechalos agvil." If your gimel went all the way to the next line, right? Let's say I wrote a gimel over here. So that's what we're going to have to take away part of this, right? Because it goes into the next column over, right? As part of the gimel. So gorov yishtayishem yaktana. If when you remove it, there'll still be a little leg over there. Kosher, it's kosher. Lav, it's not. It's possible. Rabbi B'Shem Hashayim Bar Nidva said, "Nikev nekev be'emtza base." If you have a hole in the middle of your base, this is not the dot to make it a base. You have a hole, right? A physical hole. So if there's enough white parchment to surround the hole, that the black of the ink does not go in direct contact with the hole, it's okay, it's kosher. If it's not, it's possible. We'll stop here for this evening.